Welcome back to Bible in a Year or So. This has to do with the Book of Lamentations. And Lamentations is a collection of 5 poems by Jeremiah expressing deep sorrow over what has happened to Jerusalem. It's already happened, it's over, and he is expressing deep sorrow about the destruction of Jerusalem. Because don't forget how much Jeremiah loved his people. He loved his people. The first poem speaks of the sorrows of Jerusalem. And I want you to listen to this. How lonely lies Jerusalem, once so full of people. Once honored by the world, she is now like a widow. The noblest of cities has fallen into slavery. All night long she cries, tears run down her cheeks. All her former friends, of all of them, not one is left to comfort her. All allies have betrayed her, and all are now against her. That's verses 1 and 2 of the first poem of Lamentations. And she also says, I stretch out my hands, but no one will help me. The Lord has called enemies against me from every side. They treat me like some filthy thing, but the Lord is just, for I have disobeyed him. Listen to me, people everywhere. Look at me in my pain. My young men and women have been taken away captive. I called to my allies, but they refused to help me. The priests and leaders died in the city streets, looking for food to keep themselves alive. And then Jerusalem turns to the Lord and prays, Look, O Lord, at my agony, at the anguish of my soul. My heart is broken in sorrow for my sins. There is murder in the streets. Even indoors there is death. That's part of the first poem. The second poem is even worse. It's talking about how it's the Lord who was like an enemy to Jerusalem, the Lord himself. The Lord in his anger has covered Zion with darkness. Its heavenly splendor he has turned into ruins. On the day of his anger he abandoned even his temple. The Lord destroyed without mercy every village in Judah and tore down the forts that defended the land. He brought disgrace on the kingdom and its rulers. And then Jerusalem says in verse 11, My eyes are worn out with weeping, my soul is in anguish. I am exhausted with grief at the destruction of my people. Children and babies are fainting in the streets of the city. Hungry and thirsty, they cry to their mothers. They fall in the streets as though they were wounded, and slowly die in their mother's arms. O Jerusalem, beloved Jerusalem, what can I say? How can I comfort you? No one has ever suffered like this. Your disaster is boundless as the ocean. There is no possible hope. That's the second one. Now I want to read you from the fourth one. And the fourth poem is about the punishment of Jerusalem. See, these are 5 very sad poems. And the fourth one reads in verse 9, Those who died in the war were better off than those who died later, who starved slowly to death with no food to keep them alive. The disaster that came to my people brought horror. Loving mothers boiled their own children for food. The Lord turned loose the full force of his fury. He lit a fire in Zion that burned it to the ground. This is verse 17. We looked until we could no longer for help that never came. We kept waiting for help from a nation that had none to give. Oh, that is such a sad verse. We looked until we could look no longer for help that never came. We kept waiting for help from a nation that had none to give. The enemy was watching for us. We could not even walk in the streets. All our days were over. The end had come. Swifter than eagles swooping from the sky, they chased us down. They tracked us down in the hills. They took us by surprise in the desert. They captured the source of our life, the king the Lord had chosen, the one we had trusted to protect us from every invader. Laugh on, people of Edom and Uz. Be glad while you can. Your disaster is coming too. You too will stagger naked and in shame. Zion has paid for her sin. The Lord will not keep us in exile any longer, but Edom, the Lord will punish you. He will expose your guilty acts. They were mad at Edom, and they were mad at all of the surrounding nations that did not protect them from this. But of course, when God is out to punish you, there really isn't any protection, is there? The fifth song, which is a song for mercy, it's a prayer for mercy, says, remember, O Lord, what has happened to us. Look at us and our disgrace. Our property is in the hands of strangers. Foreigners are living in our homes. Our fathers have been killed by the enemy, and now our mothers are widows. We must pay for the water we drink. We must buy the wood we need for fuel. Driven hard like donkeys or camels, we are tired, but are allowed no rest. To get enough food to stay alive, we went begging to Egypt and Assyria. This continues in verse 11, as Jerusalem is crying to God for mercy. Our wives have been raped on Mount Zion itself, in every Judean village. Our daughters have been forced to submit. Our leaders have been taken and hanged. Our old men are shown no respect. The young men are forced to grind grain like slaves. Boys go staggering under heavy loads of wood. Old people no longer sit at the city gate, and young people no longer make music. Happiness has gone out of our lives. Grief has taken the place of our dances. Nothing is left of all we were proud of. We sinned, and now we are doomed. We are sick at our very hearts and can barely see through our tears, because Mount Zion lies lonely and deserted, and wild jackal prowl through its ruins. And so Jerusalem lays before God what has happened to her, which he knows very well because he's the one who brought it on. And then the book ends. But you, O Lord, are king forever, and will rule to the end of time. Why have you abandoned us for so long? Will you ever remember us again? Bring us back to you, Lord. Bring us back. Restore our ancient glory. Or have you rejected us forever? Is there no limit to your anger? So you can see that they were feeling really bad there in Jerusalem. And Jeremiah is speaking the thoughts of all the people. But I really want you to notice the middle chapter, the middle song, chapter 3, because the chapter in the very middle of most of these books is the chapter that is really important. You'll see that as we're going along. This is chapter 3. It's the third poem. And it's a poem of repentance and of hope. And the part of lamentation that shows up in our lectionary, most of it is taken from this chapter. Most of the times that Jeremiah shows up in our lectionary, it's Jeremiah chapter 3. And Jeremiah chapter 3 is a great, great chapter. Listen to some of this. Now, it doesn't start out really, really great, this reading, but it gets great. This is verse 19. The thought of my pain, my homelessness, is bitter poison. I think of it constantly, and my spirit is depressed. Yet, hope returns when I remember this one thing. The Lord's unfailing love and mercy still continue, fresh as the morning, sure as the sunrise. The Lord is all I have, and so in him I put my hope. The Lord is good to everyone who trusts in him, so it is best for us to wait in patience, to wait for him to save us. And it is best to learn this patience in our youth. When we suffer, we should sit alone in silent patience. We should bow in submission, for there may still be hope. Though beaten and insulted, we should accept it all. The Lord is merciful and will not reject us forever. He may bring us sorrow, but his love for us is sure and strong. He takes no pleasure in causing us grief. And that's the passage from Lamentations that our lectionary uses most frequently. This is the passage in Lamentations that is right in the middle. And so even in the midst of the city's great despair and Jeremiah's great despair over what has happened to the city he loved so much, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. This is wonderful for us to remember. I would advise you to read Jeremiah kind of all at one sitting, because there are only 5 chapters to it. Read it all and then move on to Ezekiel. I'll see you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye.